Hello, everyone. Melissa here. Welcome to your Melissa Moment and welcome to Wellness Wednesday. Today, I want to kind of follow up with last week's video. Last week's video, I had mentioned my sister passed away and talked a little bit about that. Um, most of the Wellness Wednesday videos, I feel, are kind of personal things, like not always about other people, more about us, how we're feeling, what we can do for ourselves, that kind of thing. Um, Yesterday was a little bit of, hey, there's some things you can do to help others, right? I kind of want to follow up with that. So, I've mentioned before in a few videos that my mother and stepfather, they're getting older, right? It happens to everybody. They're getting to that point where they need a little bit extra help with some things. And that's kind of where, as their daughter, I step in and I do what I need to help them. Um, and, you know, you notice things, right? And it's tough because they're your parents. And they're in a hard position because they're getting older. There's certain things that they can't do anymore or they shouldn't do anymore, but they also don't want to lose their independence. And as their child, you start to see like they're having a harder time doing these things, or, oh, they shouldn't be doing that anymore, but they're your parents. So it's hard for you to have conversations with them, right? It's tough. You don't want to cause any upset. You don't want to, make them feel like they can't do things anymore and that kind of thing. But sometimes it's important. Um, Again, hard conversations. You guys, there's hard conversations. I personally have noticed, well, the last few years, both of them have really declined in health, really declined. My husband and I have both noticed things, and we step in and help out as much as we can. Um, I've recently noticed in the last couple months that my mother's sense of taste is gone, completely gone. Um, we were over for supper or something one day, and she had made pasta. And number one, my mom was always a good cook. She was always good. She worked in the hospitals for years as like an ingredient control manager, doing things. She always made food at home. She was always a good cook. Um, Never issues with that. But we were over for pasta, and I watched her make the pasta. Now, most people know you put salt in the water when you're boiling your pasta. Most people know that. That's fine. But I watched my mother put so much salt in, like so much salt. And again, I didn't want to say anything because she knows what she's doing. Um, and then we went to eat supper, and it was inedible for me. It tasted like a salt lick. It tasted like you were literally eating pure salt, pure salt. And I didn't say anything at the moment, right? Because I'm like, well, maybe it's me, right? And then I watched her and my stepfather both take the salt off the table and add more salt to their food. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. So I didn't say anything in that moment. I wanted to, kind of just see, maybe I'm overreacting. But there was a few more times that I noticed they would make food and that kind of thing. And again, very salty, very salty. Um, and eventually I said to my mom, I said, Mom, I think you've lost your sense of taste. The food you've been making is extremely salty. And, she was just like, oh, really? I said, yes. And there wasn't much of a conversation. It was kind of it. It was just like, yeah, there's an issue here. There's an issue, right? Um, and then a few weeks went by. I was talking with her on the phone, and she said to me, she's like, so I've come to a realization that I've lost my sense of taste. And she goes, salt. I don't taste it. I don't taste salt. And part of me was like, oh, thank gosh. Like, thank gosh you've realized this, right? Because sometimes people need to realize it on their own, even though you've told them, right? It's one of those things. Um, so I'm like, okay, thank goodness. You've realized this. Now we can move forward with this. Um, it's also very dangerous for my mother because she's diabetic. And if you don't taste salt and you are consuming large amounts of sodium, she has a problem with edema as it is. For those of you who don't know, it's fluid buildup, especially in your legs, ankles, feet. Especially for a diabetic person, it can be very dangerous because you can start getting diabetic ulcers, which she has had recently. It can lead to sores. It can get as bad as infections and gangrene and amputation. Like, this is all very possible things when you're diabetic. So, it's tough to have these conversations, but I noticed it and I'm like, this is something she needs to know. And I'm glad she kind of realized it on her own. So now we can try to find a way to fix it or to at least monitor it so she's not consuming so much sodium. She also said to me, I've also noticed my memory. I'm forgetting things. And I haven't noticed that one as much. But I can see it. I've also noticed she shakes a little bit. Like her head and stuff when she's talking, she's kind of shaky. Again, like my mom is like 73, um, something like that. So, you know, you gotta watch out for these things. It's important to pay attention to people in your life who are getting older because as you get older, things happen, right? I distinctly remember when I was a child, um, my grandmother had come over for breakfast one day. I can't remember. I had to have been maybe, I don't know, 14 maybe 14, somewhere around there. My grandmother had come over for breakfast and we were eating, and she said out loud, because I don't know if it was me or my mom, someone was putting jam on toast. Someone was putting strawberry jam on toast. Normal thing, right? It's a normal thing. People put jam on toast all the time. And my grandmother said, "You're putting jam on toast?" And she started laughing. And we kind of looked at each other like, okay, right? Like, that's a odd response to a normal thing. And we never thought anything of it. We didn't do anything about it. And I don't remember how long after this incident, my grandmother ended up having a massive stroke. And we didn't know at the time, but that comment was a sign that something wasn't working right. There was a piece of plaque or whatever that got into her bloodstream, right, and gone to her brain, which caused it to malfunction. And this comment came out. Um, Now, obviously, that was a very subtle sign. Uh, and there isn't always signs. There isn't always signs. But as people get older, things happen. And it's important to pay a little more attention. Pay a little more attention to the person. Uh, and if you see something that not usual, that is not usual and is starting to be a consistent thing, it's important to say something. It's important because they may not realize it. Like my mom did not realize the salt thing until I said something. Did not realize it. And it's important to say something because it could be a sign of something more major going on or something that's going to happen. So it's really important to start paying attention to our older people. It really is, you guys. Um, I had a conversation with my mom since saying, I had noticed the salt thing and your sense of taste, but I wasn't sure if I should say something, right? And right away, my mom jumped in and said, "No, please say. If you notice anything, tell me." Right? Like I need to know. And she's right. She needs to know these things because it, you know, could be a sign of something bigger that we want to try to avoid if we can, right? Or get the help they need. Um, so I'm glad I said something. Now we're at a place where we can try to find a way to deal with this and figure it out. Um, so that's kind of what I want to talk about today. If you're in a position where people in your life are getting older, or maybe you're helping them out a lot more because, there's things they can't do for themselves, pay attention to these things. Do things for them. Like I said, my mom's diabetic, so taking care of her feet are really important. So for a while there, I was taking her to like a podiatrist and stuff to get her feet looked at and taken care of because it's important. Especially as people get older, number one, they don't want to ask you for things. They don't. They don't. So even though they know they should, they won't. So offer to do things. And a lot of times, like my parents, they won't accept your offer. So that puts you in a position. Um, Sometimes you just got to do it. If there's something they need or something that needs to happen, just do it. Let them be mad at you. This happens with my stepdad a lot. I'll know there's things he needs done. I know he won't take my help if I offer it. So sometimes I just go ahead and do it. That really upsets him because he wants to be this independent person. And I understand that. But I also understand that he cannot do these things anymore. So I do it. He gets really mad at me. And I just have to take it. And then eventually, a week or two goes by, and he'll be like, I really appreciate you doing that for me. Right? He needs time to come to the realization that I wasn't trying to be harmful or hurtful. I was trying to help. And then he needs to realize that what I did help. And then he needs to realize, okay, I need to thank her for what she did. Um, so sometimes you just have to do it, you know? Um, and it could, because they don't want to ask for help, you guys. I can't stress this enough. So, I've got plans here. My daughter goes back to school. I'm going to be going to their place at least once a week, and I'm going to do things like they do have a cleaner that comes in and cleans their house now, which again is something my husband and I started for them because again, we know they're older. It's hard for them to clean things. So this was important. At the time, I didn't have the time to do it, so we hired someone for them, and then they ended up continuing on with having someone clean their house. But if they're not in a if someone isn't in a financial position to do that, go to their place and clean something. Again, they may not want you to, but sometimes you just have to do it, right? Things that are hard for them, bending down, cleaning the bathtub, cleaning out the fridge, things like that, just do it, right? Also, cleaning out the fridge is important. Have you ever been to an older person's house and you've looked in their fridge and half, if not more, of their salad dressings, sauces are expired? And I mean like really expired, like a year ago expired. Sometimes you got to just clean out the fridge and be like, you know what? Let's get rid of some of this stuff that maybe isn't good anymore, and then let's go buy you some new stuff, right? Sometimes you got to do that too because they don't always pay attention to those things, right? Just those little things, you guys. It sucks, but this is the circle of life, right? Like you're born, your parents take care of you until you get old enough, and then you're on your own. And then by the time you're on your own, your parents are declining. And now the roles kind of reverse. They go from your parents being your caregiver to now you're your parents' caregiver. And that can be a lot to process for both you and your parents because the roles are reversing, and that can be really difficult. Some people have more issue with that than others. But that's why communication is important, especially communication before you get to that stage. You know, when your parents are still younger and still able to do things, just throw in a few conversations like, hey, you know, one day we're going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to do everything you're doing today, and I might need to help you with that. I want you to know, number one, I have no problem helping you. You have helped me. There's going to be a time where I get to return the favor and help you. Please know, anytime you need something, ask me and I will do it. Um, you're not a burden to me. This is my way of giving back to you for everything you've given me. Have these conversations early. So when the time comes, they already know, okay, we've talked about this. They said they're okay helping us. They're aware that eventually they're going to have to help us. And I think the time has now come. Like, communication, you guys, it's so important. It's so important. And if for whatever reason, uh, you can't help them for whatever reason, then you better find a way to help them. Like if you physically can't be there, right? Maybe they live in a different place. For example, I have a stepbrother, okay? He lives in Alberta, okay? His dad and my mom are here where I live. So obviously he cannot come and do things for them as often as I can. But even though you don't live in the same place, there's things you can do. You can send them money every month that they can use for things they need. You can pay for a cleaner to come and clean their house once a week or every 2 weeks. You can pay for someone to come to their place to give them haircuts or to take care of their feet. Like, there's things that you can do, you know, to help out. You can also contact your other sibling who maybe live there and say, hey, obviously I can't be there. I really appreciate what you're doing for them. How can I help you help them? Right? There's things that can be done. Because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, we're all family and we need to take care of each other. And we need to find a way to do that. Okay? Now is not the time to be selfish. Now is not the time to, you know, worry about you and your life. You have to do these things. They're your family, they're your parents. You need to take care of them as they get older. They took care of you for years. Now you get to give back, and it's important. Um, so I just wanted to touch on that. Pay attention to the older people in your life. You know, and sometimes just do it. If you see something that needs to be done, just do it. Because you know, if you ask, they're going to say no, they can handle it. But you know they can't. And deep down, they know they can't as well. So open communication, help out, watch for signs, watch for declining health, talk to them about it, let them know you've noticed a few things, suggest things like, hey, maybe we should make an appointment with your doctor about this. I'm If you'd like, I can take you to your appointment. I can be there with you if you like. Because you got to remember, this is scary for them too, right? They're getting to the point where they're declining in health, which means they're also getting to a point where they're getting closer to the end of life. And that's a scary thing. So sometimes just knowing that you're there, whether you're physically there or you're there by phone or whatever, sometimes that can just give them the comfort they need to take that step to talk to a health professional to make sure that they're physically okay, mentally okay. Um, you know, there's a lot going on. So it's important to be able to be there and watch for these things. Because sometimes, even though they may notice something, they're scared and they don't do anything about it because they're scared. So hopefully, this video will help you guys if you ever find yourself in a position like this. And like I said, have those conversations early, because having those conversations early in your relationship will make it easier when you get to that point. Because you may be thinking right now, oh, we're not at that point yet. My parents are still good. I get that, 100%. But there's going to be a day where they're not good. And it's a lot easier to have those conversations when they are good than when they're not. So have those conversations today. It's important. It'll make it easier for everyone. Trust me. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.